If we were ever to divorce, I'm not going to be that kind of wife or mother to keep my kids away from their father.
If it was me and we're getting involved in a relationship, I'm getting involved with a relationship with someone, I'm thinking about marrying them. If the idea of a prenuptial was thrown at me, I'm thinking, heck, you're already thinking we're getting divorced.
And yeah, nobody wants to think about the worst happening when the best should be happening now. I get that.
In saying that, I can appreciate you using prenuptials in the just in case scenario.
Hey guys, welcome to our podcast where we talk about real financial problems with real people and we come up with real financial solutions. My name's Irene Meyer.
And I'm Philip Villanueva. Irene actually asked me a question, and it's something I don't know a lot about, so I'm going to let her kind of get me mad because she wants to talk about prenuptial agreements. And my preconceived idea of what they are irks me. Irene, I'll let you start with it.
I think when we talk about prenuptial agreement, people automatically go to the financial part of it. But if you break down the word, it's prenuptial. So before making the vows, agreement. It doesn't say pre-financial agreement. It says prenuptial agreement. So that could involve the agreement between how much time you spend with the kids. If we were ever to divorce, I'm not going to be that kind of wife or mother to keep my kids away from their father unless there's some imminent danger. So let's just agree that if something were to happen to both of us and we were to split up, that our children or our future children will not be weapons. That's an agreement that has nothing to do with finances yet. But I think a lot of people think that prenuptial agreement is something that, and I hate to put the stereotype out there, a woman who is, what do they call that? Who is cheated on, right? She's there to gouge her husband who has all the money. You just create this scenario in your head. I'm like, I want to get what's mine. And it's not just finances. I think there's two ends of the spectrum of how you want to think about prenuptials. I think that it will reflect a lot of kind of experience. I think it's probably coming from experience as well that we probably have these views. We already have opposing views as to why it might be important. But why don't you take this, Phil, and let me know what you think about when you think about prenuptial.
The reason why it irked me when you first mentioned it is because if it was me and we're getting involved in a relationship, I'm getting involved with a relationship with someone, I'm thinking about marrying them. If the idea of a prenuptial was thrown at me, I'm thinking, heck, you're already thinking we're getting divorced. You're thinking about the end. We're just at the start. That's upsetting, right? I'm not thinking I'm going to ever divorce this person. It's like starting a brand new relationship, starting dating somebody, and they're talking about if this doesn't work out. Well, why is that even crossing your mind? That's the first thing that I think about when someone brings up prenuptial.
You know what? I totally see your point about that. And yeah, nobody wants to think about the worst happening when the best should be happening now. I get that. But it's like when we're trying to position life insurance for a couple who just had a newborn baby. No one wants to think about that. No one wants to
I
think about their kid passing on.
No, I understand that, but there's one guarantee. Okay, there's two guarantees in life: taxes and death. It's gonna happen. You're gonna die. But divorce and separations, that's not a definite. Life insurance is there because there's a definite ending. There's a definite something that's gonna happen.
Right.
So you put life insurance in place because of the fact that for sure at some point that's going to happen. You can't get around that's a given. But a divorce or a breakup of a relationship, that's not guaranteed.
That's true. But then you still have people who are very adamant about providing critical illness insurance or disability insurance, where there's no guarantee someone's going to get an illness or become disabled. And for me, it's there you go then. That's even more reason, because if you were to become disabled or have a critical illness, you're going to have to live through that. Wouldn't you like to know that your income is protected? So prenup, again, without taking the word financial out of it, allows you to have a very maybe sound conversation now that there's no hard feelings because you're just in love, you're getting married, or whatever, you're just starting a relationship or you're just starting a marriage, where you can actually have this really productive conversation about, okay, but if we were to ever break up, I would like to know our kids are okay and we're not going to fight because we don't want our kids to suffer. That's part of a prenuptial agreement. You can make a prenuptial agreement however you want. It doesn't have to involve just finances. But again, you could still have a very good conversation now because you're thinking, if it ever came to it, because we've all seen examples of relationships that have gone really badly, and using the example of having children involved, where the children are stuck in the middle. If there was a prenup, that would avoid any of that fighting. It might save you a lot of money because there's already an agreement in place that we're not going to fight over this. We've already decided to come together and make sure that this prenup was made because we cared about our future children.
You brought up a good point there. For the general public, we've had, I don't actually know if we've had the podcast on disability and critical illness yet. Critical illness is something where if you get diagnosed with a serious case of cancer, you will get a certain, whatever the insurance coverage is, you'll get that nominal amount given to you in cash, non-taxed, right? It's not taxable cash, and it's given directly to you and in one lump sum, right? If you're going to die in 2 months, you don't have to use it on medical bills. You can use it on whatever, right? That's what critical illness is for, okay? For the unforeseen, right? And same with disability. Disability, you're going to get a certain amount on a monthly basis, just like disability insurance at work. You're going to get a monthly amount. Sometimes with personal insurance, it's a top up, whatever. I think we should do a podcast on those two factors as well. But it's money coming in, right? So in saying that, I can appreciate you using prenuptials in the just in case scenario. And I get that. But here's the reason why my first thought, and this is the only time, like whenever I've seen prenuptials before, it's always in a movie where you've got a rich guy or a rich woman, and
Right.
the father of one of the two is saying, "You're going to marry my child. I want a prenuptial." The idea
Right.
that's being said there is because you're coming into this relationship poor. You're leaving
Right.
the relationship poor. That's what the general public thinks of prenuptials. I'm finding very interesting, and I don't know enough about prenup. I'm going to be honest with everyone out there. I don't know enough. I do educate myself on these things, so I will educate myself on it. So what you're telling me is, so you have two couples in love. They are getting ready to get married, so they are definitely in love. How many, for all the couples out there that have separated or divorced, and you've talked to a lawyer or a judge, or you've talked to a counselor, and they say this: think about when you were actually in love with your partner. Would you be acting the way you're acting now? It's mainly a counselor that's going to say this, but a judge might say this if they're trying to counsel you on the custody of the kids. If they're trying to say something, they might say, think about when you two were in love. Would you do this to your children? So realistically, you're at a point where you are in love. You have to make sure that you understand what a prenuptial actually is. It's just an agreed upon situation, maybe forecasting a little bit about, okay, if we are in a better place down the road, this is what we're going to agree to do. That's technically what you're saying. That's what it is. We're agreeing to do this if something were to go bad. Can a prenup be adjusted down the road?
Like, why wouldn't it be? You can adjust your will.
Okay.
You just probably need something in writing legally to be enforced.
Okay. If you guys are still in a good place and you're considerably wealthier, you can readjust everything accordingly, right?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it takes some special people to do a prenup the way it should be intended, I think. Anyways, you're right with that example with the father wanting the wife to get a prenup before she even gets married to this husband, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. We've been conditioned to think it's one way, right? Has everything to do with money, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be about just money. Like, you think about when people break up, get divorced, you have to talk about the custody of the children, right? You have to talk about how you're going to split things down the middle with time and money. And if you can do that in a place where you guys are still on talking terms, talking to each other like human beings before anything bad, what bad could it bring? In fact, to me, and again, like you thought about, you're already thinking the relationship's going to go bad. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about the relationship. I'm just talking about the what if, just like anything else. You're already saying I'm going to get cancer. No, I'm not saying you're going to get cancer.
How does someone go about getting a prenup? Is it just a written, like a legally signed document that you two, let's say you two just do up a Word document and then go to a lawyer and sign off on it?
I don't know, but I think that if anybody's watching and a family lawyer that handles these things, please put in the comments. Maybe we invite a lawyer to talk about things that they've seen financially and how it could ruin someone just because people just can't get along.
Yeah.
I think it's beneficial to have that kind of perspective, because especially before things get bad.
A lot of people, they say, oh, that'll never happen to us because we get along. So I'm going to tell you guys, people, like, when relationships end, they may seem like they're ending well, but that is a very selected few that actually complete well. It's a very selected, especially if you're dealing with families and children and that kind of thing. Because what happens down the road is, I'm going to use the term selfish. Humans become selfish and they stop thinking about
Yes.
the whole, they start thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
That may be directed by the legal system, that may be directed by whatever, but what eventually it gets not so well anymore when the ending doesn't always work out pleasant. So
Yeah.
with that end of everything, I do kind of appreciate having something documented in a legal print saying, hey, you are, remember earlier in one podcast, we talked about generational wealth, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about one of the 4 pillars being mental stability. Documented saying if something were to happen, now you and your partner are getting into an argument, and whoever is the breadwinner is usually the one who gets worried that if this ends, if I need to end this relationship, then they're going to take they're going to take all my money.
Yeah.
That mental instability is gone. If you're in a toxic relationship where you are threatened in that relationship, you can walk away and not have that mental stress anymore. You can, of losing whatever it is, right? Because you've already got something in place that's alleviated. So that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, and now that I know more from what you've told me, it actually makes sense, right? Because you are giving yourself stable grounds in your 4 pillars by preparing yourself in a situation of the unknown.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, like it's not for everyone. I get that. And just like insurance is not for everyone, even though it should be, but it's not for everyone. It again, I think it takes a very secure person to realize just the logistics versus the emotional part of a prenup. I think we need to take the whole emotional part of what a relationship entails out of this equation so that you can go into it being yourself, right? Like you think about the very beginnings of your relationship. Hopefully, this is the case for most people. You're like your happiest, you're most confident, you're most secure, you're not afraid. You go into it head first. And I've been through two major relationships where I was fortunate to come out without having to fight. Because then that just brings in another cost. And okay, let's go back to finances. I've seen people go through mega fights, spending way more money than they probably should have, just fighting because they're letting their lawyers do the fighting for them. That costs money over things that, if you think about logistically, about how it might affect kids or mental well-being, like you said, or just the idea of just fairness. I think you're probably at the best opportunity to think about that at the very beginning of a relationship when it's good, because you're both very kind to each other at the very beginning.
Something that dawned on me when you were talking just now is there are people out there, and we got to be honest with ourselves, that are they're submissive or they are gullible, right?
Yeah.
And there's usually one alpha, right, in the relationship. That can happen. So here's my advice. If you are going to get involved in a prenup, do it with an advisor. Get an advisor on board. Do it with an advisor. And because they're going to look at everything neutrally. Yeah, because the advisor is going to look at everything neutrally. They're also going to look at, they're going to also be able to pre-forecast situations. They're going to look at, okay, this is your current situation financially and your net worth, your net wealth. This is your situation. And this is where they can project where it could be, let's say 20 years down the road, right? They can project that. And then, so you can work out an agreement here. And in the subclauses of the agreement, we're going to re-review this at this time, right? And that way, there's no where the alpha is guiding the submissive person to put something on paper that is not in their best interest. Yeah, please, if you are going to get involved in something like this, I don't know your situation, but that's always a threat too, is somebody is being guided without actually really knowing, right? Find someone neutral, and I'm thinking an advisor, because they can look at your financial situation. Somebody who can actually professionally look at this situation. An advisor is probably your best bet, to be honest. Have your advisor a part of this conversation. If you're using the same one, great. If you're using 2 separate ones, have your personal advisor on either side look at the situation and say, okay, you know what? this is in the best interest of both of you and possibly your future family. Because that's what they'll do. They'll look at this and say, this is great. This is a really good thing for you guys financially, for your family's well-being, your family stability. This is a great thing. Put this on paper. Absolutely. That should be the direction that an advisor gives realistically in that situation.
Yeah, that was a great segment. I agree. I think that it's worth chatting a lot about, or chatting more about, sorry, in future podcasts. But thanks for joining us, guys.